Hello, and welcome to a video profile of the mod Behind the Curtain, which is in actuality a mod of an existing Skyrim overhaul called Requiem, which I'm sure if you're watching this video you're fairly familiar with. Use of Behind the Curtain, or BTC, depends on installing and running that Requiem overhaul, a popular but nevertheless niche role-playing mod for Skyrim. There are, of course, several overhauls for Skyrim. Requiem is the one that you would need for Behind the Curtain. As of right now, both BTC and Requiem exist only in 32-bit Skyrim due to the limited functionality of the Skyrim Special Edition and the lack of a script extender which is required to run the mod properly. Until highly sophisticated programmers learn how to port the script extender called SKSE to a 64-bit Skyrim, we're going to be playing with the 2011 engine for a while yet. Before we explore the changes in BTC, let's look a bit at the theory of Requiem's changes of the Divines. The Imperial Pantheon of the Nine Divines is the most important religious order in the world of Nirn, and specifically the continent of Tamriel in which the series of Elder Scrolls takes place. The religion combines the 8 Aedra with the apotheosized form of the founder of the Third Empire, Tiber Septim. This latter divine, of course, is particularly important in the lore of Skyrim as he is revered by Nords as Talos. In regular Requiem and vanilla Skyrim, you have an opportunity to worship each of the divines, but with important differences in the role-playing overhaul. The Divines offer an empowered blessing for those asking for their favor in Requiem. To obtain this Divine, you will have to undergo a quest associated with that temple and fulfill certain conditions of the Divine. Crime is also really important in Requiem, with murders, theft, and bounties becoming relevant as to whether you will be blessed by the deity. Failure to remain true and noble and purposeful to the Divines will result in abandonment of the blessing. Behind the Curtain follows the same concepts as Requiem, but takes role-playing a step further, creating the opportunity to not only seek the favor of the gods, but to become a priest or priestess of your chosen faith. Each divine in Behind the Curtain offers tantalizing buffs and benefits to your character, but they come with the same role-playing price as in Requiem. You cannot betray the tenets of being a faithful servant of the divines, nor any specific requirement of your chosen deity. So now that we've got through that, let's begin by looking a bit closer at all of the divines. So here we are at the Shrine of Akatosh, the dragon god of time, endurance, and invincibility. To my mind, this divine really rewards warriors who depend greatly on stamina in battle and who intend to play the Dragonborn, or would think about going through that quest line. This is indicated by the stamina buffs, beginning with 25 points into that pool, and adding a further 25 points every 7 days after that to a maximum of 100 stamina. This is a massive pool of extra stamina for warriors who would use power attacks like two-handed warriors or melee fighters who must sprint from enemy to enemy. As well, for every Dragon Word of Power earned, Akatosh grants a bonus of 5% to fire resistance, up to a maximum of 75%. At first blush, this seems a bit of a difficult challenge. However, in Requiem, the dragons aren't unleashed upon Skyrim until after the quest Blade in the Dark. One could conceivably collect several words of power from throughout the holds before taking on dragons, and getting a huge bonus to fire resist before that happens is both wise and sage. Once you do start killing the dragons, well, Akatosh may be your deity of choice here, for he will grant 10 bonus points to your carry weight, up to a maximum of 50 bonus points. You know, this third perk may or may not be a big deal for users who already buff their carry weight in the MCM menu of Requiem, or who use bandoliers through the Complete Crafting Overhaul Remade mod. However, for those who like to squeeze every last pound to its fullest value, this is a nice bonus. Arkay is the Lord of the Wheel of Life, funeral rites, and the seasons, appropriately placed here in Skyrim's largest graveyard in Falkreath. Following this divine will enable you to roleplay a fantastic paladin or spell sword priest who cleanses the undead from Skyrim. Given the sheer number of Draugr crypts, this is an attractive choice of divines. With a 50% spell cost reduction for turn undead ranks 1, 2, and 3, repel undead ranks 1, 2, and Circle of Protection, you can confidently walk into Draugr crypts to cleanse Tamriel of their filth. There is a caveat, however. Those who follow Arkay must accept his opposition to all forms of necromancy and conjuration, which means possessing the Necromancer amulet, which would be this guy right here. The Necromancer amulet right here. You cannot possess that. But we'll go ahead and drop that on the ground. We'll go ahead and drop that amulet, because you cannot get the blessing while you possess that, nor can you have any conjuration perks. So I'm not actually gonna be able to click this shrine because I have conjuration perks on this character. So those conditions are also required for the 35% spell cost reduction for Heal Self ranks 1, 2, and 3, Healing Hands ranks 1, 2, and 3, and Healing Ray. These spell cost reductions again make for a fabulous paladin, Templar, Cleric, Healer, or whatever kind of holy priest you'd like to create for your playthrough. Last but not least, Arkay grants a fantastic plus 50 to damage resistance with an additional plus 25 to damage resistance for every 50 undead you send back to Oblivion, up to a maximum of 150 damage resistance. Everything about this build is screaming a spell sword with Sunfire, Sunburst, and a like-minded companion with whom you can cleanse the world of the undead. Next up is Julianos, the god of wisdom and magic, also governing the law, literature, and logic. This is my chosen divine for my current Lawful Good Necromancer playthrough due to the very overpowered buffs that you get for a magic casting character. First of all, Julianos grants a 10% bonus to magic resist, which is just a great reason for an Altmer to take the blessing, given their racial weakness to magic. Magic resistance is largely considered the most important factor for surviving in the endgame content of Requiem against those dragon priests, dragons, vampires, and of course the many boss battles that await you. Like the other divines, Julianos will only grant his bonus so long as you never pick a pocket. Trespass, which really is easy to do by mistake, so you need to be careful. You know, when they say you're not supposed to be in here, make sure you get out. And you can't steal anything. So it may be best to play with the mod Block Steal Redux to avoid accidentally losing that blessing. As well, for every 5 spells that you learn, Julianos will grant you a bonus 20 magica points up to a maximum of 100. This is huge and not at all difficult to accomplish given the many spells that magic casters come across in the game. And you can see here, if we go to the magic, all the spells, not including of course the mods that are added, but Absorb Health, the Arcane Wards, Blur, Bound Sword, Candlelight, you know, tons of spells by my current level of 24, so that's not too difficult a bonus to receive. Lastly, Julianos rewards reading, so really be sure and open every book you find. Even if you don't, of course, read it, you will get credit for having read it. Doing so grants you a 25% increase in Magicka regeneration to a maximum of 150%. This is again huge. It's like finding apprentice robes for free. So here we are at the Shrine of Dibella, just south of Dawnstar. as you'll recognize. And so what is Lady Dibella? Lady Dibella is the goddess of beauty, the lady of love, and the queen of heaven. And what does Lady Dibella give you? Well, there's a 10% bonus to speechcraft, which can be decent for selling items, of course, and a plus 10% to experience points gains when you're using illusion spells. So Dibella would be really helpful for anybody who wanted to go into the magical tree of illusion. Speaking of which, the Charming Touch spell costs 75% less magicka to cast and is 50% stronger when carrying an instrument like a lute, a flute, or a drum in your inventory. This is just a really interesting addition from behind the curtain, because that means that you could roleplay a priest or a priestess of Dibella who's also a traveling minstrel who plays for coin in taverns and follows Dibella's laws. It could be great to play a bard. There's all sorts of roleplay ideas that come to mind with a behind the curtain Dibella playthrough. As well, for every 200 butterfly or lunamoth wings that you pluck, Dibella will grant you the casting, will reduce the casting cost of those illusion spells that manipulate the minds and the emotions of others. So this includes Frightening Orb, Lion Heart, Enraging Orb, Hibernation Touch, Enraging Rune, Frightening Sphere, Hibernation Spray, Nightmare, Phantasmal Pain, Blackout, Phantasmal Killer, and Mind Maelstrom by 5% up to a maximum of 25% in that spell cost reduction. So once again, this is the divine of choice for an illusion magic caster minstrel. There's plenty of other reasons to follow Dibella as well, certainly in lore and roleplay through the associated quests in Skyrim, and of course in the temple in Markarth. Kynareth is the goddess of the heavens, winds, and the patron of sailors and travelers. And of course, where else would we go but the Temple of Kynareth in Whiterun? And there, of course, is Danica, the main priestess here. Otherwise known as the Peace, Love, Hippie Goddess, for reasons I will soon explain. Being one with nature really pays off with Kynareth. Playing a Bosmer Ranger would be very fun with this Divine's Blessing, as you will get a 15% damage to bows, not crossbows, but only if you have never harmed a hair on the head of a butterfly or a lunamoth. So that means that alchemy could be problematic for this particular build. As well, when wearing the robes of Kynareth, or 3 pieces of either fur, hide, leather, or forsworn armor, and one must be a cuirass, Kynareth will bless your animal hide wearing proclivities with a Spriggan health regeneration effect that increases every 5 levels. Given that one of Requiem's core selling features is the removal of Vanilla Skyrim's unrealistic and silly healing, you do not regenerate health in Requiem unless you use a healing poultice, potion, or a healing spell. This bonus blessing is massive. Being able to heal naturally will be a huge advantage in the early game when potions are scarce, and I think it's also a nod to the fact that blue butterfly wings can no longer be plucked to make potions for alchemical concoctions. Lastly, Kynareth hands you an absolutely and breathtakingly easy to acquire 100% poison resistance for discovering 25 locations, which usually happens inside the first 2 to 5 hours of play. As well, after discovering another 25 locations, you will receive permanent feather falling. So that means that throwing yourself off cliffs to avoid being killed or captured is absolutely a viable means of dealing with overwhelming enemies or odds. In all, I think that Kynareth is a really solid choice for a hunter or ranger, and would be fun to roleplay for a wanderer using Hunterborn, the Hunterborn mod, which allows you to hunt animals and skin their carcasses, along with, say, a Frostfall, the mod by Chesko, which makes the environment cold and harsh, and his accompanying mod for Frostfall, Campfire, which allows you to live in the wilderness and hunt and gather firewood and make fires. And that would be great to use that in tandem with relying on Kynareth's favor for your survival in Skyrim. Next up we have Mara, the fertility goddess, patron of the bountiful earth and mortal compassion. So, what do you get with Mara? Given the aforementioned divines, it's a bit difficult to imagine role-playing a priest or a priestess of Mara, unless you really want to be a healer. In analyzing the buffs conferred by Mara by worshipping her loveliness, the trade-offs are not worth the effort compared to the other divines, in my opinion. First off, Mara will bless you with a 10% disease resistance up to a maximum of 100%, but that's for every disease you contract and presumably cure. At first blush, this might seem like a worthwhile perk, but in my recent several hundred hours of Skyrim gaming, I can recall few, if any, diseases I have contracted, and gaining the 10 diseases that you would need to hit 100%, I think would be more annoying than exciting. Just going to move away from Maramal here in case he continues to intrude on our discussion of this mod. The buff that I do find interesting from Lady Mara is that after gathering 10 Nirn roots, Mara will protect followers from paralysis. This perk alone would be worth swapping to Mara for those intent on going into Falmer dens, where their poison paralysis stun lock can result in very frustrating deaths. I'm sure that you've all experienced that. While not as relevant on a poison-resistant race or wearing a poison-resistant armor, having this peace of mind could certainly encourage people to give Mara a try. Lastly, for every 10 levels you achieve in Restoration, Mara will reduce your Arcane Ward spell by 10% magicka to a maximum of 70%. This raises a few interesting ideas, including a spell sword who uses Restoration for themselves, healing hands for their followers, and Arcane Ward as their shield. Is it enough to get users to switch from more powerful blessings like Julianos? Well, that's really your call. Next, we have Stendarr, the god of justice, mercy, charity, and well-earned luck. As the name implies, this blessing will have many a Requiem role-playing user trying their hand at playing a Vigilant of Stendarr. The plus 15% extra damage with 1 and 2-handed axes is fantastic, as is the plus 75 damage resistance and plus 50 stamina points if you're wearing an Amulet of Stendarr while under his divine grace. One can imagine a heavily clad Vigilant carving his way through the undead hordes with ease and poise, with the extra damage output, reduced incoming damage, and more comfortable stamina reserve. Paired with a stamina proficient race, and you can have a fantastic character that can rid the world of the poison of Daedra and Daedra artifacts. Although not likely to help early or even mid-game, if you do manage to kill 5 Daedra, you will receive a buff of 5% increased movement speed, to a maximum of 20%, provided you are wearing 4 more pieces of heavy armor. While uncommon opponents in Skyrim, killing Daedra is a prime directive of the Vigilant, and it just makes this perk rather intriguing. As with Arkay, these blessings will be nullified if you use the Necromancer Amulet or you attempt to learn any of the dark arts in the Conjuration Tree. Stendarr is already a popular role-playing part of Skyrim, simply because there is a faction here. These are all adherents of Stendarr, and so it would be fun to kind of pretend that you're joining them and role-play along with being a priest or priestess of Stendarr or one of his followers.
And deserve our praise you do, for we are one. Ere you ascended, and the 8 became 9. You walked among us, great Talos.
So thanks to our buddy Heimskr there, we all know about the Shrine of Talos in Whiterun. And let's just talk a bit about Talos, because it certainly wouldn't be Skyrim without the blessing of Talos, the hero god of man and the lord of war and governance. This is an attractive choice for a Nord Dragonborn playthrough because Talos confers 15% additional damage when using one- and two-handed swords, which makes a warrior Nord a really obvious choice if it wasn't already, based on sort of their style, their culture. As an esoteric bonus, if you prefer trying your hand at ripping apart the evil of Skyrim with your bare hands, you receive an extra 5 points of damage to a maximum of 40 bonus damage for every brawl you win. Talos certainly seems to love his mixed martial arts. As for the way of the voice, Talos loves it when you shout like Ulfric Stormcloak. So for every 50 times you shout, Talos will grant 5% electric resistance, up to a maximum of 75%. The downside of this bonus is that you kind of need to kill a dragon to get that first shout. And then if you do go dragon slaying, Talos will grant an additional 5% bonus to shout cooldown, up to a maximum of 20% for every soul that you collect. This blessing seems to be one that you'd want to swap to when you've specialized in axes, maybe killed some dragons, collected some shouts. It doesn't seem like a blessing you'd really want right off the bat, as the perks won't come into play until you've really done some heavy lifting already. As well, you'd really want to think about playing a playthrough with a Nord, because Nords do get a passive cooldown bonus on shouts already, which is part of the racial overhaul that we'll talk about in another video. But it is good to try to synergize your choice of divines with your racial abilities and your standing stones. So it really is sort of a trifecta here that you want to analyze and develop your build before beginning this mod. The penultimate but final good divine is Zenithar, the trader god of merchants, labor, commerce, and communication. Like Talos, you get a 15% bonus damage, but only when using blunt weapons like maces and warhammers. This is a nice little bonus for anybody intending to specialize in blunt melee weapons. As well, you will receive a +5 to barter for every 2,000 merchant transactions. This is up from 200 from the previous build Behind the Curtain, up to a maximum of 25 to barter. This is a nice passive bonus as everybody talks to merchants constantly to sell the loot that you collect in Skyrim, but it certainly won't be as easy to reach that goal as it was with 200 merchant transactions. So now it will take 2,000. So when you think about all the times that you speak to vendors to sell your loot, it's not inconceivable to reach that number. Still, I think you might see Zeromorph playing with that number a bit. Going from 200 to 2,000 is quite a jump in my opinion. You will also be sorely tempted into grinding blacksmithing, and that's because for every 50 armors that you craft, you will receive 50 health points, receiving another 50 when you craft 80, 120, 160, and 200 armors, respectively, to a maximum of 250 health. This is a massive bonus, and it makes anybody who crafts armor and plays with a melee character want to use the Blessing of Zenithar. To put this into perspective, 250 additional health is more than my buffed level 24 Necromancer right here. And it's also a fantastic reason to avoid becoming a werewolf, just to get that massive health bonus from the companions. A lot of people who play Requiem, especially Dead is Dead, they want to rush towards getting to become a werewolf. And you cannot be a werewolf while using Behind the Curtain. So here's a way of getting a massive health bonus without becoming an ungodly creature. As with all honest merchants, if you want to keep Zenithar's blessing, you cannot have been jailed before. Lastly, there is a reason to play a bad character in Behind the Curtain if you choose Nocturnal, the Daedric Prince of Darkness, Luck, and the Night. Now, I can't show you the Shrine of Nocturnal because I haven't gone through the Thieves Guild questline and become a Nightingale and sort of submitted myself to Nocturnal. But, of course, it all begins down here by joining the Thieves Guild. So, having said that, Nocturnal is a fairly difficult blessing to unlock, but the benefits are arguably worth the investment if you're going to play behind the curtain and be a thief. For one, if you get her blessing, you will receive 25 bonus skill points in Sneak between the hours of 8 p.m. and 8 a.m., which is great if you're sneaking around. As well, for every 50 locks you pick, Nocturnal will grant 5% cold resistance up to a maximum of 75%. As has been pointed out by others, this would require 750 picked locks to max out, so you best not leave any lock doors untouched anywhere in Skyrim. Anywhere. And what I found out is that you can actually go back to doors that you've lockpicked. Even if you've reached 100 lockpicking, you can go back and open locked doors, because citizens will lock their doors every night even if you've picked and broken the lock. So you can reach that, although of course 750 locked doors are a lot to go after, that's for sure. Lastly, for every 500 items stolen, Nocturnal will grant a flat 1 magicka per second regeneration buff up to a maximum of 4 magicka per second. This could greatly benefit the kleptomaniac who takes everything from one septum to clearing the larder of every home you break into. As well, as you will see when we get into the standing stones and the racial abilities videos coming up next, creating synergistic builds between all these three choices can result in some very strong characters. So think about a thief with 4 magic per second. Could be a master illusionist spellblade who slithers past their enemies unseen. There's a lot of possibilities here, so although Behind the Curtain certainly encourages you to be a good character, there are reasons to go Breaking Bad.
Of the divines.
So, to become a priest or priestess of any of the aforementioned divines, except for Nocturnal, one must be a faithful servant by following the 9 tenets listed here. Thou shalt not steal, which means do not steal 10 items or more. And this means that thieves cannot receive the blessings of the divines, as I mentioned. Thou shalt not murder. Even one murder is unforgivable. In the event of accidental murders, there are console commands to remove the blemish from your record. Skyrim being Skyrim, mistakes happen, and you can find a way to remove that murder using the console commands by going on the Behind the Curtains Nexus mod page. Thou shalt not accrue a bounty. Having a lifetime bounty of 3,000 or more, or having a bounty currently anywhere, can be problematic for you. Thou shalt not join the Thieves Guild, speaks for itself. Thou shalt not join the Dark Brotherhood, speaks for itself. Thou shalt not drink the blood of the innocent, so no vampirism allowed. And thou shalt not convene with the beasts of Hircine, so this means no overpowered werewolf race while using the blessings. So, as mentioned before, you can't go through the Companion's quest line and get that huge health buff. You will lose the blessings of the divines. As well, thou shalt not employ any Daedric artifacts, weapons, or armor. So this means no black soul gems with your Azura Star. No overpowered armor-penetrating one-handed Dawnbreaker from Meridia. No ebony mail or ebony blade. No invisible entity-slain Mace of Molag Bal. No fortified barter buff with the mask of Clavicus Vile. No Meruna's Razor. No Ogma Infinitum. No stamina buffing Ring of Namira where you eat the undead or the dead. No Sanguine Rose, no Savior's Hide or Ring of Hircine, no Skeleton Key, no Skull of Corruption, which requires you to murder anyway, so that would be obvious. No Volendrung, and certainly not any Soul Tomatoes with the Wabbajack. Throughout this video, you've seen my character wearing the various robes of the divines I was talking about. One of the major new features in Behind the Curtain is the use of these robes, beautifully skinned and shared with permission by the modder Lind. So be sure and go and download that mod on the Nexus so that you can endorse it and show your appreciation for this amazing work in this mod. Priests and priestesses of their chosen divine now have an incentive to wear robes because of the various benefits you will receive, meaning you will not only see the difference in the new robes, but you'll also feel them. Priests are now broken down into 3 tiers of power known as titles. Acolytes are characters from levels 1 to 14, and those robes provide 100% magicka regeneration bonus. From levels 15 through 29, a priest advances to Adroit level robes, which offers 200% magicka regeneration. And once you reach level 30 and beyond, you may wear Consummate robes, which offers 300% magicka regeneration. You may purchase these robes from court wizards in the 5 major cities of Skyrim, such as Farengar's Secret Fire from Whiterun's Dragon's Reach, Calcelmo in Markarth's Understone Keep, Sibylle Stentor in the Blue Palace of Solitude, Wunferth the Unliving in the Palace of Windhelm, and Willandria and Riften. A priest's robes are very different from mage robes. It's true that priests enchanting the robes are enchanted, giving the wearer a basic increase in magicka regeneration, as we already mentioned. But unless you're blessed by the divines, the robes will do little else for you. When a divine blesses the wearer while wearing the properly assigned robes, the priest will receive additional blessings according to their current title. Here I am wearing Akatosh here. So Akatosh provides acolytes with a 15% increase in magnitude for all mage armor spells, a plus 50 buff in magicka when reaching the Adroit level, and a 10% bonus to magicka resistance at the Consummate level. Kynareth gives her acolytes 50 bonus magic points, a 15% increase in magnitude for all mage armor spells at Adroit, and a bonus 10% to magicka resistance at Consummate. Zenithar also buffs mage armor spells by 15% at Acolyte. That 10% magic resistance bonus is given at Adroit and confers 75 additional magicka at Consummate. Like Kynareth, Arkay acolytes receive a plus 50 bonus to their magicka pool and a 15% increase in magnitude for mage armor spells at Adroit, with a huge plus 100 bonus to magicka at Consummate. Dibella also boosts your magicka by 50 at Acolyte, your magic resistance by 10% at Adroit, and another 100 magicka at Consummate. Julianos, and these are gorgeous purple robes, gives acolytes 50 magicka, 10% magic resistance at Adroit, and another 10% magic resistance at Consummate. Mara offers the same extra 50 magicka to acolytes, a 15% buff in your mage armor spells at Adroit, and 100 magicka at Consummate. Stendarr buffs mage armor by 15% at Acolyte, adds 75 magicka at Adroit, and confers 15% bonus to magic resistance at Consummate. Lastly, Talos gives acolytes 15% mage armor buff as well, 10% magic resistance at Adroit, and a buff of 100 to your magicka pool at Consummate. You'll want to carefully study which divine may offer you and your magic build the best possible outcome before choosing which one you wish to worship. And you must note that all of these blessings stack according to your level. So this means that while wearing your Adroit robes, you would receive not just the benefits of that level, but also the buff you would have received at Acolyte. And of course the same holds true for when you graduate to Consummate. One final little mention about these robes. If you download and use the mod Hide Helmet, auto toggle the helmet. So the mod's right here. Helmet toggle, and the default hotkey is H. Pressing that will enable you to kind of be a more chastened hood wearing character, or you can let your hair down like that, and of course that'll work for men and women. Well, that covers it for the blessings of the divines. In the next episode, we'll look at the standing stones of Skyrim, and in the third episode, we'll look at the racial changes made by Behind the Curtain.